We reconnect. And what we have on the wall at Hearn Fine Art now is the result of that conversation. And if you haven't been in to see the exhibition, it has been extended through July 11th. And we've got other things planned for you as well. But I want to thank you all again for being here and turn it over to our moderator, Anna Hearn, and Alice, Aida Ayers. So thank you.
If you would allow me to, if this is something that I can do, I would love to formally introduce our artists for the afternoon. Give me 1 second. Our artist this afternoon is from Albuquerque, New Mexico, but has lived throughout the US and a few African countries. Since 2018, she's been based out of El Paso, where she serves on the board of the El Paso Art Association. She is an adjunct professor at Henderson State University and serves as Director of Therapeutic Arts for Central City Development Corporation in Iowa. The artist holds degrees in fine art, design, and art education, and has exhibited work in America, Europe, Mexico, and several countries in Africa. As an artist in education, she has conducted residencies in over 250 schools, colleges, community centers, and has painted over 20 community public murals. The artist's work is created with strong colors and shapes, and she loves depicting the female figure. We're going to learn so much about the artist's inspirations today through a PowerPoint and a presentation that the artist has prepared, and then I'll ask some questions. You ready to get started?
Ready. Excited.
Okay. All right, I'm going to broadcast our presentation. And here we go.
All right. Thank you so much, Garbo. Thank you so much, Anna. Oh, we need to go way back to the first image. So we go back. Yeah. So what I wanted to do today was just have a little conversation with you all just about my journey as an artist, my process, and some of the influences and inspiration in my life. Like many of us as artists, we started when we were children and, may have had that dream of becoming an artist someday. I'm not going to go all the way back to my childhood, but what I want to really talk about is kind of when I started incorporating fabric and fibers into my work. And this was probably around 1990. And I was doing a lot of painting. I was still attending ULR. I went to school very late, so I got my education late, and I didn't finish my bachelor's till about 93. And then I went on for the master's, I think in 95 or 6. But during that time, around 1990, I really became so very fascinated with African fabric. I had always known that I was going to go to Africa and live in Africa since I was a young child. And I was always really fascinated with African art and the images that we all would see of African people, the continent, the beauty, the joy. And I always wanted to depict that in work. So I did a lot of painting, and I always worked with a lot of mixed media. I loved experimenting, still love experimenting. I work a lot with, not anymore so much, but at this time, 90s, I was working with plaster, stucco, toilet paper, anything that could give me some kind of texture in my work. And I would always incorporate any fabric that I found. At that time, Patrick Oliver had a shop where he sold African fabric in Little Rock, and I would buy fabric from there and incorporate it. This piece right here on the screen is a piece that I did, and it was very typical of the work I was doing back then, early 90s. just a lot of texture and trying to capture movement and daily life in Africa. I had not been to the continent yet, but this was my imagination. This was, what I thought it was going to be like. From there, I kind of moved into working more directly with only textiles. In '93, I got the opportunity to go to Mali in West Africa, and I studied there for a couple of months. I was supposed to be studying bronze pouring and sculpture, but I became so fascinated with the women and all of the fabric and textiles that they were creating. Indigo fabric was just such a beautiful thing to create. So I got that opportunity to work with them. And then I was hooked on fabric, and I really didn't know how to make that transition completely to working with materials, because I still had that desire to experiment and play. But at the same time, I started to do embroidery and just working with the women in Mali and kind of using some of those techniques. So this piece here is a very early piece, and it's just still incorporates paint and fabric, but also embroidery as well. The next slide is a piece from the 2000s. And then this was when I really was trying to focus only on using fabric. And this is kind of what I started out with. And the fabric, the figure is actually fabric that I created in a workshop. Now, this is a piece that I did after I moved to Zanzibar. For those who don't know, I lived in Zanzibar in a village in Mangapwani for close to 20 years. And a lot of the influence and a lot of the work is based on what I experienced in that village and the people that I worked with and the supplies. Now, the cool thing about living in a village, an African village, is that there are no art supplies. So one has to be very creative and just figure out how to make supplies to use in art. One of the things that I would do was that I would create my own paint out of lime wash, limestone that was crushed, and then it became the powder that's called choka, and it's mixed with pigment, and then you can create paint out of it, but it's very toxic, so that didn't last for long. I recycled a lot of glass and bottles and a lot of trash to make art. And again, I was still moving towards the idea of just working with fabric, but still experimenting and doing what I could do to play and create. Next slide. So I want to go on now just to talk about the work that's in the exhibit at Hearn Fine Art. The exhibit is divided into 3 series, and the first series I want to talk about is called Embracing Spirits. Now, these are all images that are based on experiences that I had while living in this village in Zanzibar. It was a village called Mangapwani of about 500 people, and a very, very interesting
When you call just in time, you know when I need something.
Oh, sorry. Oh, where was I? Oh, so I was saying that, this village is a really interesting mix of traditional beliefs, culture, religion, just a very, very different way of life. But in a lot of ways, it really reminded me of just a very small town in the South. I was in the military and I was down in Mississippi for a while, and it reminded me of just a very small town that was very close and had their own set of mores and just a specific culture to that area. So this series, Embracing Spirits, is all about experiences and stories from that village. But what I want to show you here is the process that I went through to create the textiles. So this drawing is a pastel, and it's actually a sketch for one of the pieces that I'm working on in this particular series. Next slide. So if you go to the exhibit, you'll see the piece on the right. And this is the sketch for the textile. The sketches, you know, they may look like, they may not look like, but I had a very specific idea in mind for what I wanted to express. And it was this experience, this feeling. This piece is called The Possession of Mama Mdogo, and it's a story about my next door neighbor who had been possessed and was going through an exorcism. Not the type of exorcism like you see in American movies, but this was actually a ritual whereby rose water was used and prayer and all of this stuff to kind of get this young woman back in a normal state. So I witnessed what was happening, and the sketch here was my impression when I saw her going through this. And a year later, I decided to create these textiles from the sketches that I had done and the accompanying stories. Next slide. This piece right here is called Embracing Spirits. And so in the sketch, you see the figure is embracing, because in this particular village, people were not so much frightened and horrified by these shaitani or these spirits, but there was a need to embrace them and get along with these shaitani and these jinns that existed, knowing that they weren't going to go anywhere. So it was just, you know, in order to keep things in harmony, you know, one tended to embrace these jinns and kind of give sacrifices, build altars toward them, and that type of thing. And so that's what this piece represents. In the textile piece, I use a lot of little materials that I actually got from the village. For example, the shells, and you may not be able to see them, but there are very tiny objects that I have embedded into these pieces that I just had collected over the years, and I felt that they just needed to be a part of the permanent piece. Next slide. This is the sketch. This piece is called The House of Spirits. So in the village, there was a woman who was said to have shaitani or jinns available if somebody needed to get one of these to put shaitani on another person, to put a curse on another person. And so that's what this is representing. And she lived probably about maybe 50 meters up the road. And I never met her personally, but one night when I was walking with my neighbor next door, Sharifa, when it got to sundown, she encouraged me to turn around and go back because you did not want to be in front of the woman's house during that time. And this was just something that was known in the village. This was something that you didn't do. So the textile piece, and you can see that this probably resembles most, more than the rest of them, but you know, the depiction of the houses, and those who have been to that village, I see Tony Wilson there. He's been to that village in Mangapuan. He knows that the houses and the roofs they're, you know, thatch roofs and very small houses, and they're just kind of piled right next to one another. Again, the pieces in the textile, for example, the shells and even the raffia and the burlap that's used, come directly from the village. The fabric on the bottom is from my dyeing indigo fabric. So all of the processes and many of the textiles that I try to use in these pieces are from Africa. And I go back every year since I've been back in the States for 6 years, and I go back every year and I collect more fabric. And over the years, I had many students, and we all studied together, and we did a lot of batik and fabric dyeing. And I collect from these former students and purchase their fabric to bring back and use in this work. Next, please. This piece right here, it's a self-portrait, and it's called Aida, Somebody Put a Shaitani on You. So in the village, I was going through a very difficult time for a few years, and my friends in the village told me that somebody had put a shaitani on me. This means like somebody had put a curse on me, or maybe bought one from the lady in the house of spirits. And so I was sketching my dreams that I was having, and this kind of feeling of just hopelessness and despair. And if you look in the sketch, you can see that it was just kind of tearing me apart, and I just felt quite defeated. This sketch I had actually done back in maybe 2005. The textile piece I just did this year. And the sketch, I've had this put up for years and years, and I had not even looked at it. And this year I finally pulled it out. So, I'm over this. Let me go ahead and turn it into a textile piece. Excuse me. So in the textile, I've incorporated those bones, and the process I use, all of the bones that I depict in the textile, they're all embroidered. So I embroidered all of these little bones separately, and the flowers, and there's a little bush baby, that little yellow creature there, which are very common in the village and run around all night long. So that's embroidered. I try to use as many techniques as I can, not intentionally, but just because it feels right. In the process of creating, whether one is writing a book or writing music or playing music or making a work of art, at some point, that intuition, it just takes over, and you're guided, and spirit, universe, call it whatever you like, God, guides you to just continue to work and move forward in that process of creating. It's such a beautiful connection to be able to just create and allow and flow. And so that's a lot of times what happens when I do a piece of art. In the textile, there's a red split down the middle of the figure, and that is to represent just that split that I was feeling. Do I go? Do I stay? Am I sane? Am I going crazy? You go through all of those things. Where is my spirit? Yeah. So I was really going through a tough time. So, and I feel like probably of all the pieces, this really is a proper representation. The other really weird little interesting tidbit about this piece is, while I was working on it, the hair that I've used in this is actually, the weave you can buy. So you can buy and that's what I use in there. But while I was working on it, one of my dreadlocks fell out. It just literally just broke off. So it's also in there. I just kind of included it as well. So, yeah, so literally my DNA is in these pieces. Next, please. The second part of this exhibition is called Homage to My Ancestors, to the ancestors. This picture here is a picture of my great grandmother, and it was taken around 1857, and it was during the time where she was still in slavery in Washington, D.C. My daughter looks so much like her, it's quite haunting. But a lot of the work that I did in this particular series is to just show appreciation, prayer, love, worship towards those who came before. So slide, please. So this piece is based off of that particular image and the idea of her. So here I've got three images. The first one with the shells is a representation of what she would have been in Gambia, which is where part of my ancestors came from. So what I did was I just kind of copied that hairstyle and just went with it. So the first piece is Gambia and her as royalty. The second piece, or the center figure, is the plantation. So she's on plantation, and I really tried to focus on that expression. And in this middle piece, I wanted it to have an expression of maybe defiance or definitely not defeat. So in that middle section, that would be plantation. The last piece right there is called assimilation. So going from the queen to the plantation to the assimilation, integration, and just becoming, in the end, what was expected of you. So this is, for me, it was a very strong piece. When this piece sold in the gallery, I was so taken aback, and it was almost, I had a reaction that was, Garba was there to witness it. And she asked me if I was okay, because it was so shocking that somebody understood and received this piece and really embraced how important and how much it meant to me. So I was really honored that somebody decided to take this piece and honor it as much as I do. Next slide. Excuse me. This piece is called The Voice of the Drum. And the young lady was, I was doing an artist residency in Pine Bluff, and she was in a drum circle workshop that we had. And I just felt that she was such a beautiful queen. So I asked her if I could portray her, you know, as, or in one of these textiles. And for me, the drum is so important because the drum and the heart is the heartbeat of creation. And, you know, the idea of a drumming circle and calling on the ancestors and calling on the spirits and calling on all of those who give us that strength, that power and fortitude to move forward is so important and such a strong part of my belief system. So in this voice of the drum, I felt that that was portrayed. And the fabrics that I used in the drum itself are really important. It's bark cloth that I picked up when I was in Uganda. And bark cloth is made from the tree, the bark of the tree, and it's pounded into almost a fabric, but it's very fibrous. And it's used to wrap deceased people and bury them. And so I thought that was just so fitting and so appropriate to use that type of material for this drum and to call on that heartbeat, knowing the significance of that material. And all of the other fabrics are from East Africa, whether it be Tanzania, Uganda, or Kenya. Next, please. This sister is a very dear friend of mine. Her name is, they call her Mama C. Now her name is Charlotte Hill O'Neill, also an artist and musician. And she and her husband, former Black Panthers, have lived in Tanzania for close to 50 years. They went into exile in the 60s and with the whole group of Panthers that went to Algeria and then Tanzania, and these two ended up staying. But she's such a staple in the community, and she always goes out and gives libations for the ancestors. So this photograph was taken of her, and so I asked her permission to just depict it in an image. But in the image, she's paying homage, and then the ancestors behind her, those three figures, are not to be actually witnesses or live people, but they are represented as those ancestors that have moved on, and she is serving libations for them. And this is something that she does with the entire village on a regular. So it's just a very, very beautiful and spiritual happening. So I was very honored that she let me depict her in the way that I wanted. The fabric in all of this again is East African. It's either Kanga or Kitenge, Kikoi, and then there's also some local fabric from America that is filler in there. Next. So the third series in this exhibition is called Ndio Maisha, which translates to That's Life. So in Zanzibar, anytime something happens, good, bad, people will say Ndio Maisha, that's life, and you just kind of roll with it. So what I wanted to do in this series was depict all of those beautiful things from everyday life. Things that the braiding of hair, and sitting there and sharing that, that pensive look. This is my daughter here, Dana, and then the two figures are my daughter and granddaughter. But just those things that I appreciate so much and that are so very fleeting. So I just try to incorporate that in these everyday lives. So this is just portraits of people, places, students, that type of thing. Next. This piece right here it was a commission, and it's again depicting just that wonderful, wonderful idea of the reading circle. And it's called I'm Wearing My Reading Shoes. And the process for this, I restarted this piece a couple of times because it just, I didn't want just a typical little reading circle when I did this, but I wanted to make the young man there the focal point. So what I had to do with him was give him those big, bright yellow shoes. And I started thinking about the activities that we do and how we dress up, for an activity. So he's wearing his reading shoes. I mean, when we go outside to ride a bike, we wear our sneakers or our tennis shoes, or, so there's very specific footwear for the activity that he's participating in. Now, the stitching all around where the figures are sitting is all by hand. And I don't know if I mentioned, but all of the pieces that I do are all hand stitched. I don't use a sewing machine at all. I really, really, really love that connection between that needle thread and my hand. No matter how many times I poke myself, I just keep sewing, and there's something that is so lovely, and that connectivity is very special for me. So all of the stitching all around the bottom, that area that represents a rug, is all hand sewn. Next, please. So this right here is, this is a picture of actually the property, my property that I lived on in Zanzibar, and we had a big gathering one day. So everybody just kind of comes out and puts on their best clothes and their beautiful congas, and find a place on the ground and sit and enjoy the vibe. And so I started depicting these beautiful women in Zanzibar and in the village of Mangapwani. The young woman here, her name was Zawadi, and she was a young lady who was a student, and also she cooked at my place there in Zanzibar. And so I've done a whole series where I've depicted just all the beautiful women from this village. I'm not showing all of them though. I don't know if this is the last slide or not. I kind of just wanted to give an overview of this show, and just to let folks know why, because a lot of people have commented, like, for example, the Embracing Spirits, the pieces are so very different from the Ndio Maisha pieces. So I wanted to just explain, the purpose behind each series. And now I will turn it over to you, Anna. Anna.
I'm here. Let's unmute all these buttons. Thank you so much for walking us through the show. I would like to get a little, biographical here for an artist talk. Just as an artist, it is definitely, you're born an artist, but it also has to be a choice. You have to continue to choose to create art. Can you talk about the people, just that poured into you, that enabled you to be an artist? Like how, like, were your parents encouraging? Was it a teacher that started you on your way?
That's so funny. You should say a teacher. Um, Growing up, I was really shy and really awkward. And from first grade, I did not want to be around people and I just did not do well in the classroom. So I had a teacher in first grade who actually allowed me to just draw my way through the first grade. I don't remember ever turning in an assignment, but I sketched all the time, all the time. And she allowed me to do that because she saw that that was the only way that I was able to cope with being in that setting, with being in the classroom, being around strangers. I didn't do it very well. So when I was 17 years old, I ran into this teacher and she recognized me immediately. And the first thing she asked me if was I still drawing. And I just couldn't believe that she remembered, but she just knew something. So from that time, that was the way that I kind of coped with life. But I always loved to draw. As I got older, artists that inspired me were people like the work of Charles White and Elizabeth Catlett, African American artists from the Harlem Renaissance. I just loved the work, Jacob Lawrence with those bold, bright colors, and Bearden with, just the wonderful collage. So all of those types of things really, really inspired and just tickled something in my soul. Of course, Faith Ringholt, she was so instrumental because her ability to do some storytelling through textile fascinated me. And so when I started really working with textiles, she was one that I looked to. But for the most part, I have to say my biggest influence had to be African art because I love the way figures were depicted. And I just loved the idea of mixing colors that you wouldn't imagine would go together and creating something, a textile that was so very beautiful and turning it into clothing that was just absolutely magnificent. So did that answer your question?
Oh yeah, definitely. Shout out to the teachers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you're definitely well traveled, have traveled all over the world. Is there one place that you always have to return to where you feel the most creative or most proliferative, or you, if you ever have an artist block that you always feel like you have to go back to? Is there a favorite place that you've been or traveled to or made you the most creative?
Mm. I do have a few places. I go back to Zanzibar every year because I have friends and family there and students that I worked with 20 years ago who are now blasé and have children and grandchildren of their own. So I always go back there and I do have community there. And just being in that environment, it really is so inspiring that you cannot help but be creative. shapes of trees, the color, the light, the foliage, the animals. There's so much that makes you want to create. So that is a place that is all inspiring. But I also go back to Italy a lot. I go to, and I'm always inspired when I go to Florence, just, the architecture and of course the art there and the history. It really is very inspiring to me. Another place that I find very inspiring is Oaxaca, Mexico. So those are the three places that I have to say are my favorite places to go, and where I get so much inspiration and just so much influence. And where in all of those three places, every time I go, I take workshops. I'm of the mind that you're always a student, you're always a teacher. So if I find a workshop, whatever it's in, I don't even care. It could be printmaking, sculpture, textile, even mezcal making when I was in Oaxaca. So I love learning and I love workshops, and all of those kinds of things I end up using in my work somehow.
Thank you. I know we talked about traveling, but your travels have also brought you to Arkansas. Can you talk about your ties to Arkansas? I also have a kind of two-part question. I know quilting and working with textiles is also really about community. Do you feel like there is a quilting community in the local Arkansas area, if you're aware? But also, can you talk about your relationship with Arkansas and your ties to Little Rock? And I guess also just like how your relationship with the gallery. We just also, just want to hear the development of the relationship would be really cool.
Okay, so Arkansas, I've always considered Arkansas my home. Um, I when I was during my entire time in Africa, people asked me if I was ever going to go back to America, and if I went back to America, where would I live? And my answer was, oh, Arkansas, of course. That's my home. I mean, I grew up in Albuquerque, but I left when 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I went into the Navy, and I ended up in the South, and I found my way to Arkansas, and it's I've always called it home. Um, I do most of my work there. My relationship with Arkansas. Arkansas was where I got the opportunity to go to Africa for the first time. It was where I went to university. When I grew up, and in the household I grew up in, the idea of going to college or university was never even mentioned. It was one of these households where it's like, you graduate high school, you turn 18, you're out of here. There was not that kind of structure where, oh yeah, you're gonna go and get your degree, and no, nothing like that. So when I came to Arkansas and I realized that I could actually go to university, I jumped at that opportunity, and it was absolutely wonderful. I loved UALR. I loved learning. The instructors that I had, I absolutely adored. Uh, it was, for me, it was very challenging because I was a single mother, and I dragged my daughter to class with me, and that was a lot of fun too, for me anyway. I don't know if it was fun for her, but yeah, that was a really good time. And there, while I was studying, I got the opportunity, somebody presented me with the opportunity to go to Mali, and I also got the opportunity later to go to Kenya. And I dragged my daughter there with me as well. So we lived in Kenya for a year and a half. But my connection to Arkansas, I mean, it was, yeah, it is home. Of course, I'm not there right now. I'm in Clarksville, Tennessee, but yeah, so I committed to being here for another year, and then we'll see what happens. I've made some wonderful friends here too, by the way. But so my connection to the gallery was very interesting, because while I was at UALR, a friend of mine took me to Pyramid Gallery, and it was on 12th Street. This was way back, so it must have been 88 or 89. And at that time, my friends saw that I had talent, but I was not confident and I wasn't sure. And I really wasn't ready for that whole gallery thing. I did not have a body of work. I was completely unprepared, but it was on my radar. So I knew at some point that I'd go back there. Eventually, after I finished my undergraduate degree, I did go back and spoke with Garbo, and she put some things in the gallery, and she sold some pieces, and it was nice. It was really wonderful. I still, at that time, I still had Africa in my brain, so I just was not committed to being a full-time artist. I still felt like I had so much to learn. I still do. but yeah, so Garbo, yeah. And I thank her all the time for giving me that opportunity because she saw something. I'll tell you what, dude, that woman, she sees something. When she sees an artist or a piece of art and she tells you, yeah, this one here, you better listen because she has definitely got something there. I finally got to have a first exhibition at her place. I think it was after I returned from Kenya. So it must have been maybe in 1996. And it was when the gallery had moved down to the River Market. And I had an exhibition there, and that was really wonderful. And then I went back to Africa, and we kind of lost touch for a long, long time. And then, to be able to reconnect, it has just been completely joyful. Amazing.
Thank you. It absolutely has. I'm going to ask one question, just art related, and then I'm going to open it up to our audience here. But you have experimented with so many mediums and forms. Is there anything else you want to do? Do you see yourself working with anything else? Do you have any aspirations? And can you talk about what's next with your creativity and your work, if you can predict?
Mm. You know, I think I have to use up some of this fabric that I've collected. I've been collecting fabric since 1993, and I have got fabric. I literally have a room full of fabric, top to bottom, and I've got to use it. And I've got to stop getting more fabric until I use that. So yeah, for right now, I'm so very satisfied, so content with this sewing. So as long as I can do that, I want to continue pushing that envelope and seeing what else and how else I can create with this particular medium. I just love it so much and it feels so wonderful. Um, I still do a lot of experimenting. I love playing with glass, so I do a lot of fused and stained glass stuff. And this is for myself. I if I see a table, I will strip that table down and mosaic it in a heartbeat. I love doing that type of thing, and it just kind of as a break from sewing or as a break from the textile. But I used to do a lot of sculpture and I did a lot of cast paper that I also mixed with the textile. And I just kind of weaned myself from doing other things and really focusing on this because it is just so satisfying for me. So as far as art for the, foreseeable future, I think this is what I'm going to be doing. Um, and just see how I can manipulate it and play with it a little bit more. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, but you were, oh, sorry,
Oh, no, please.
but you were also asking about like quilting groups or in Arkansas. I haven't been a part of the quilting groups because what I do is not traditional quilting, and the process involves using other materials besides sewing and besides machines. So I really haven't belonged to, but I've really been fortunate enough to be able to do several different residencies around the state and just share and work with students and teach this particular process. And I have found that teenage boys absolutely gravitate towards this type of art creation. So I'm finding that really fun and fascinating working with the youth and teaching them how to do this.
Definitely. Working in education, I can attest to that. So I am going to allow participants to unmute themselves. If we have any questions, definitely you're invited to unmute yourself, and or any comments, please do so now.
I'd like to say something.
Go ahead, you can introduce yourself.
I'm Zebekia Meditabiao, but I was born in Bahrain. And this was very, very exciting to hear and to be a part of. Excuse me, y'all multitasking. But it's very interesting on the spiritual journey that I'm on that practices African spirituality. I knew when I saw the work, everything within me just had chill bumps. Every single piece. And I haven't been there, and I'm glad there was an extension. I'll get there. But it spoke to me. It did. And I was on the edge of my seat. With everything that you shared, I'm grateful because I too have had my experiences too. I've been to Africa. I call it Merita, land I love, twice. This past year and the year before on a pilgrimage. And I stayed 3 weeks. I didn't have residency, but it was such a profound experience. And I've been basically reinventing myself as an artist too. Like, art is not art how I knew it to be. It's totally different now. So this is very inspiring. I will have questions. I'll table that. Alice, we're connected on Facebook Messenger. I'll take advantage of that. But I did want to share that this means so much. It's highly inspiring for real. I mean, not even just for an artist, but just I think for human beings evolving and sharing our personal experiences where for real, using your voice as a message, you know, is very empowering. So I really appreciate you for taking this time. And yes, I will get to that exhibit.
Wow. Thank you so much for saying that. And I just want to say that what you just said about, how it changes what you think of yourself as an artist and the way that you make art. That's exactly the experience that I had, and with the experimenting and trying that, it really does and it's interesting, as much as I honor my education that I got in America, the education that I got in Africa and how it changed what I did and what I believed about my own art was just remarkable. So that is very profound what you said about that, and becoming the artist that you become after being there. It's intense, it's visceral.
Aida, would you talk about the workshop you're going to be doing on June 15th?
Oh, thank you. So June 15th at Hearn Fine Art, I will be doing, it's about a 3-hour workshop. Oh, well, here it is. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll actually create a work of art. Now, it probably will not be finished, but you'll have all the materials to take with you so that you can finish the piece. And I'll go through the entire process and yeah, we'll get a piece started. Now, keeping in mind, a lot of the pieces that I do take anywhere from 200 to 400 hours to complete from beginning to end. We've got a 3-hour time frame here, but you will definitely be able to do the pattern cutting, get the fabrics all placed, and get the sewing started. So I invite you to join. I will bring a lot of fabric that I have here in my room full of fabric, and a lot of it is from East Africa. So you'll be able to go through all of that and choose and create your own piece of art. So please, if you are around and available, go sign up and join us for this process. It'll be a lot of fun.
We have 5 slots left. We have 7 people signed up. We have 5 slots left. So
Very
if you
nice.
want to do it, take advantage of it.
Yeah, for sure. for sure. And also for the exhibit, yeah, there are what we, try to do is, just kind of make art available for everybody's budget. Everybody cannot get a $20,000 piece of art. Everybody's not expected to. I always say that, whatever work of art I'm creating, there's somebody in mind that it belongs to. And fortunately, Hearn Fine Art, they have terms available. So, we try to make art available for everybody's budget and to get into our households. It's very important for African Americans to start, if you haven't already, to invest in art, to have art in your home. So, I mean, Hearn Fine Art is a good place to go to do that.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments from our audience or questions?
Hi, my name is Shabana. I do follow your work, Alice, online, and I think it's beautiful. And thank you so much for doing this virtual artist talk. It means a lot because I'm a practicing artist as well. I focus on South Asian fabrics in my artwork because that's my heritage. So I love seeing what you do. And my mum used to sew clothes as well for the South Asian community. So I'm familiar with sewing and what have you. I was just wondering, how big are your pieces, seeing as you hand stitch them and you're hand stitching in different fabrics into the artwork? So how big do your pieces go, or how small do they go?
Thank you for asking that. And Shabana, I absolutely adore your work. It's so beautiful, and it just blows my mind how realistic it is. I could not do that
As well. I focus on
realistic it is. I could not do that
as well. I focus on
realistic it is.
I don't know what's going on with this volume.
So the work, I have pieces that are as small as 9 inches by 11 inches and as large as 4 feet by 6 feet. And it's an arduous process sometimes because I do incorporate a lot of different types of fabric. And one of my favorite tools is this pair of pliers that I use to pull my needle through, because sometimes the fabric is so firm and hard and thick that I can't do it with my hands. So I use pliers to pull needles through, and I go through a lot of needles. I break a lot of needles, but I don't use any type of frame. I literally I have a 4x8 table in my studio space, but most of the work I lay it right on my lap and I sit and I sew. And I think this comes from my grandma, teaching me how to sew, and everything was just right on her lap. She never used any type of table or surface other than her lap. And so that's what I do. And sometimes I do sew my clothes up into the piece and have to take all the stitching out. Yeah, so it's a lot of fun.
Do you have a box of scraps that you dig into for the smaller pieces for work in the future?
Do I, girl? and I am bringing those, I'm bringing those to this workshop and leaving them behind. So if anybody signs up, you are welcome to the scraps, because I have tons and I have such a hard time throwing them away. So.
And your work, has it been viewed by the village community in Africa where you spent 20 years living? Have they seen your actual pieces that were inspired by your visit and your life there, I guess, because you spent 20 years there?
Yeah, they actually have. So the last time I was there last year. Yeah, because I haven't been this year yet. So I was there last year, January, and I met with everybody, and I was working on a couple of pieces, but I also had brought 3 pieces that depicted some of the young women in the village. So, and while I was there, we did a lot of this same thing. We did sewing. We sewed by hand, and then we did have some machines, with the foot pedal machines, and we used those to sew with. But I did take pieces, and the first thing they said, of course, "Oh, that doesn't look anything like me." So, Yeah, but they appreciate it and they enjoyed seeing those things. And they're still doing a lot of textiles. They do a lot of applique work.
And with textile work, because you've obviously been showing and exhibiting your work for a number of years, do you think the way we perceive textile related art in the arts has changed drastically from what it used to? Was it always appreciated using fabrics in art rather than traditional paint or pencil? Do you think it's more prominent and popular and has more eyes on it now than it did before?
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And it has moved into the fine art arena. You know, there's still some resistance, but you know, we have, you know, artists, weavers, you know, from back in the Baja's days that were doing remarkable work. If gosh, I tell you, names are escaping me right now, but I'm thinking of some of the textile artists from the 50s and 60s that were doing just amazing stuff. And again, Faith Ringholt, she kind of led the way with that type of thing. But nowadays, I see a lot of work of textile artists that's really more mainstream. It's not, you know, just what people perceive as a quilt that you lie on a bed. If you look at traditional quilting, that's become so intricate, and what people do with sewing machines is so phenomenal. It's really mind blowing. But for myself, I just choose not to use a machine. Like I said, I really enjoy the process. It's like you with the brush. You know, you enjoy that process of putting the paint to the canvas and just working with every detail. And that's how I am with the stitching. It's that same feeling.
Do you alter any of the fabrics, such as dyeing them or any of that that goes into an overall piece of artwork?
I do a lot. I destroy a lot of fabric. Yeah. But I do love this piece, the piece that I'm working on that I had put on Facebook, the one that's inspired by Nina Simone. The whole background, I have kind of dyed and reworked the fabric. And like I said, I love playing, so I will play with, oh, I wonder what'll happen if I do this. You know, if I put, you know, I'll use bleach and I'll tie it up and knot it up, and then I'll bleach it out, and then I'll re-dye it. Or and I still also will use acrylic paints, and I'll paint on it to manipulate it or just kind of change it a bit. Yeah, so I love just playing with the fabric and experimenting and manipulating it.
Okay, thank you. I'll give somebody else a chance to ask questions.
Thank you so much, Siobhan. And like I said, I really appreciate and enjoy viewing your work. It's absolutely phenomenal.
Thanks.
So Alice, can you talk about Aida? Forgive me. Please share how you feel about commission.
About?
Commissions. How do you feel
Oh,
about doing commissions?
Commissions are tough. You know, for me personally, part of the reason is because if I create a sketch, along the way something happens, and you know, the whole process just kind of gets misconstrued. I would love to do some commissions, but I'm not really good at commissions. And this is just me personally. There are some artists that, you know, they are so good, and I think this is just part of my education that maybe I need to learn more about. But I think though it's a wonderful, phenomenal opportunity, and I really do believe that companies, organizations, individuals should always look into having something commissioned. If they don't see something that appeals to them immediately, I think that they should always pursue that avenue, because it's an important way of life for an artist, because there are some artists that just live off of commissions only. So this is a very important part of the art industry. That makes
My
sense.
last question, do you have any museums you'd like to be part of their collections?
Oh, wow.
Just wonder.
Are we talking about local or national or international or?
I mean, do you aspire to be in anybody's collection?
You know, I would love, of course, in Arkansas, I would love to be in all of the major museums there because that's home base, right? But it would just thrill me to be a part of an exhibition, like, for example, in Washington, D.C., the women artists, and women to watch artists. I would love to be a part of that exhibition because there are people, there are women in there that I admire so much and that I look up to. So to be a part of that community would be almost, not that I need validation, but it would almost be kind of a validation, because a lot of those women in there are people I consider mentors. So to be parts of that collection would be really cool. What is the name of that? There's that organization. What is the name of that? There's an Arkansas chapter, Women to Watch, and it's the.
Are you talking about the Arkansas Committee of the National Museum of Women in the Arts?
Yeah, that
Okay.
one. Yeah, yeah. It would be nice to be a part of that collection.
Okay.
But in all honesty, I'm a type of artist where if I never sold another piece, I would continue to make art. I feel so blessed and so grateful that I'm able to sell work and that there are people out there that are blessed to have my work and that we both prosper from the ownership of my work. I think it's really, really a blessing and I'm so fortunate. But regardless, I'm going to keep on making it and my daughter is going to be stuck with a whole lot of work. But yeah, I'm grateful to you, Miss Garbeau, for the work that you've done on my behalf and for believing in the work that I do. Really,
You're welcome.
thank you.
I have one final question. Where can I find your work? How can I collect it? What is that process looking like as we have both the artist and gallerist here on the screen?
Yeah, well, I mean, there at Hearn Fine Art. So Hearn Fine Art is my gallerist. Okay, that's who represents me. But uh, whatever questions you might have, you can either contact me personally, or I would say, go through Garbo, and she can answer any questions, and she can, if there was something, someone interested in a commission, Garbo would be the person to go through. My mission is to create the art, and I do count on her to do what she does as a gallerist and represent the art. So I think that's a pretty good relationship. And I would say to go to directly to her and yeah, everybody
I would
can.
say first come and see the exhibit.
Yes,
Find out, get in touch with your creative side and fall in love with textile. And then from there, we'll find the piece that'll work for you.
yes, definitely.
All right. Well, if there is nothing else to be said, thank you all for attending, asking your questions. Thank you to the artists. Thank you to the gallerist, my mom. And everyone, please have a wonderful Sunday afternoon.
All right.
Right.
Alice, you got the last word. What do you got to say?
I just want to say thank you both for hosting this. Yeah, Anna, your questions, very thought provoking. Miss Garbo, for all that you do and your commitment to me as an artist. I appreciate that.
All right.
For an art. Yeah, did I say that?
We'll see you soon, right?
All right. Much love. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
We stopped the live stream. We're good.
All right.